Hello, my name is Hannah Hill, and this is my capstone collection titled Raising Ruins. My collection consists of knits for a women's wear fall/winter 2022 collection. At the start of this project, I researched fashion shows and paid particular attention to knitwear. One fashion show that was particularly inspiring to my collection was the spring/summer 2021 collection by Laura Beccotti. The fashion show was interesting to watch because it took place in an outdoor courtyard of old Roman buildings, and all of the guests were seated in a large circle 6 feet apart. With the models walking around the middle of the circle, it was almost as if the mood and concept board were surrounding the show. This collection relied heavily on mimicking the structured pillars of the architecture using cables and textured knits. This show inspired my muse and her life. My muse is a woman between the ages of 24 and 35. Due to the recent pandemic events, she now works from home. She enjoys being comfortable while at home, but also looking put together and professional for Zoom meetings. Taking this idea of comfort and yet structured apparel, I created this mood board. I used structured and sculptured imagery to portray a serious mood with a very neutral color palette. I took the idea of structured and hard stone and mixed it with images that made it look soft and smooth, or broken and crumbling. Using my mood board as inspiration, I created this collection of 21 knit samples that incorporate a variety of yarn selections, gauge, and knit structure that ties back into my concept. One element that I focused on throughout this collection is yarn choice and slub yarns. In the sample on the top left, I used a simple 1x1 rib structure to bring the focus on the slub yarn that I used and the chunky feel it gives to this knit. In the two samples on the right of this slide, I use a lay-in technique with wool roving to create a false slub appearance. In the white sample on the bottom left, I use a yarn with contrasting slubs and elastic to draw in and illustrate the texture of the structure. In these samples, I experimented with yarn and incorporating more or fewer ends to change the density of a swatch. The sample in the middle uses a single jersey stitch, which is simple in complexity to fully bring attention to the variation in yarn and weight. The sample on the left uses flechage and multiple feeds of yarn at different weights from each other to illustrate the ruffle effect this technique produces. The sample in the middle uses a combination of yarn variation as well as randomly held or missed stitches to create dimension. These two samples also incorporate a metal yarn which is light in weight but adds luster. I also designed a series of samples that use racking, cabling, or transfer stitches and hand embroidery techniques to resemble the solid and structured aspects of my concept board. These samples all incorporate racking the beds I'm knitting on from side to side. The one on the top right is more consistent and evenly structured and also uses a silk yarn for added luster. The other two samples are random in their racking pattern. The one on the top left also incorporates fewer needles in action for a random pattern of misses. In the top left sample on this slide, I used hand embroidery to create an added structural detail. In the other samples, I use cabling and transfer stitches. My cables are all completely random in design and appear inconsistent or random yet structured. These two swatches both incorporate pointelle details. The one on the left was knit on the bulky machine at school and has a large gauge, while the one on the right was knit on the shima with elastic, so it is at a much finer gauge. These samples all use a variety of techniques to create texture and dimension. The sample on the top uses flechage to create pockets of contrasting gray. The other three swatches use a variety of held stitches, jersey rolls, links, or missed stitches. The piece on the top left also includes a monofilament yarn, which was difficult to knit with, but provided a unique texture and crunchiness as well as shine and luster. These are 4 illustrations I did to depict how these fabrics could be used. I intended all of these samples to be versatile and capable of being dressed up for professional Zoom meetings or dressed down for casual work from home. As part of my capstone collection, I also transformed 3 of my fabric swatches into garments. The first is a sweater that I made using my cables design in an unpredictable structure. I knit this completely by hand on the passet machine. I used a drop shoulder silhouette with rounded neckline. The sleeves and back are the technical back of a single jersey, while the front is the technical back with the added design element of cables. When I knit the front body piece, I didn't use a pattern to draw out the placement of the cables, and I just let them form naturally by just transferring stitches at random. The second garment is a knitted dress that I made by hand on the passet machine. I used the random racking method with missed stitches for the body to create a fitted and clean look. At the bust, I used single jersey with short rowing to create shaping. The third garment is a pair of leggings that were knit as a whole garment on the shima using an elastic yarn. The design incorporates pointelle that is either at random or in structured diagonal lines. The two design areas occur at alternating placement on each leg. Finally, here are all of my illustrations and the garments that I completed during this project. And here are all of my knitted samples pictured together. Thank you for watching.